South Korea and Vietnam celebrate 32 years of diplomatic relations this year, having forged formal ties back in 1992. So what have been some of the milestones in bilateral ties over the years? What have been some of their key economic ventures? And what has been the role of Hallyu in promoting bilateral cultural interests? Welcome to Tuesday's edition of Issues and Insiders. I'm Min Sunhee. Vietnamese Prime Minister Pham Chinh is here in South Korea on an official visit at the invitation of Prime Minister Han Duck-soo. For more on the partnership between the two countries, I have Professor Rajiv Kumar from Hankuk University of Foreign Studies here in the studio. Professor Kumar, it's a pleasure to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
I also have Professor Song Soo-young at Chung-Ang University with us live on the line. Professor Song, it's been a while. Welcome back.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me again. Yeah.
Professor Song, we'll start with you. Now, back on Monday, that's yesterday, Vietnamese Prime Minister Pham Chinh attended a business forum hosted by the Korea Chamber of Commerce and Industry. What were some of your takeaways from that particular forum?
As for the forum itself, is not the more important. Of course, it is very important forum, but however, what is more important from the Vietnamese side is the reason is currently South Korea is one of the largest export market to Vietnam, particularly the smartphone and some electricities and other types of, particularly the garments, I mean fabrics. So because from Vietnamese perspective, South Korea, as long as because of the some a little bit tense relationship between China and the U.S., then the South Korea government would like to move away from their factories and investment in China to neighboring countries such as Vietnam. So to that regard, this is a very welcoming sign of Vietnamese to increase and the trade relationship and also improve the diplomatic relationship. That is realized as some comprehensive strategic partnership has been attained or accomplished between the two countries. So to that regard, the Vietnam has a strong incentive to foster and improve and maintain, continue the current trend. So that's why the Pham Minh, who is the third ranked highest government official in Vietnam, has come to South Korea. Yeah.
Right, indeed. And before we delve further into the trade ties, Professor Kumar, South Korea and Vietnam, as I mentioned earlier in the clip, forged diplomatic ties back in the year 1992. That being said, could you walk us through some of the milestones in bilateral ties over the years?
Yeah, that's a very important relationship. Since the establishment of the ties in 1992, both countries have achieved significant milestone in economic areas, politics and diplomacy, as well as cultural areas. Let me go one by one. I think the economic relationship is a key pillar of South Korea-Vietnam relationship. As Professor Song also mentioned that the tie between South Korea and Vietnam is really deepening in a great way. For example, South Korean companies are the largest investor in Vietnam. So far, they have invested more than 90 billion US dollar in 10,000 projects in Vietnam. That's too huge number. Not only investment, but trade as well. Look at the trade figure of South Korea. Vietnam has emerged as the third largest trading partner of Korea after China and United States. Look at the ODI. Vietnam is the largest ODI recipient from Korea. So these suggest that economic is the backbone of this relationship. Now on diplomatic front too, Korea and Vietnam both established comprehensive partnership in 2001. They established a strategic partnership in 2009, and then recently in 2022, they established comprehensive strategic partnership. So these upgrades suggest that really there is something going on really real in Korea-Vietnam ties on security, and defense front as well. Now, last but not least is the people-to-people connection between Korea and Vietnam. Look at the Vietnamese national working in Korea at the moment. They are the second largest group in Korea after the Chinese people. There is also a large number of Vietnamese students are studying in Korea at the moment. They are also the second largest after the Chinese students. On the other hand, for Korean travelers, Vietnam emerged as the best destination. So to conclude, the Vietnam-Korea relations, achieving significant milestone in politics, economy, culture as well. Yeah.
Right. So the ties between the two countries, Professor Song, as Professor Kumar has mentioned, is quite active. That being said, Professor Song, what more can you tell us about the economic partnership between these two countries?
Yeah, actually, Professor Rajiv has also mentioned comprehensively about the economic relationship between the two countries. Clearly, the driving force to make the South Korea and Social Republic of Vietnam has been improved and increased. The main reason, a primary reason, is due to the conflict between the China and the U.S. Trade conflict. So that is kind of a byproduct and benefits enjoyed by the very fortunate opportunity for Vietnam. But Vietnam, as I mentioned earlier, they would like to maintain this kind of momentum, not only in trade and economic ties, but also in diplomatic ties. I believe the reason is, of course, the South Korea and Vietnam is very close to. It's the second largest political power and economic power in the world right now, China. Therefore, they have a strong incentive to have some counterbalancing power in these areas. So that's why the Vietnamese government, even though they have some different political ideology and some relatively economic implementation policy-wise, there is clearly some difference. But however, both countries have recently, Vietnam has shown very strong economic growth rate, as well as the base wage salary has been also increased very a lot for the. And also pension system has been adopted for the Vietnamese people. So to that regard, Vietnamese government would like to improve some welfare for the Vietnamese people. And also, Professor Rajiv has mentioned that one of the second largest population in Korea, and also so many Koreans pay a visit to Vietnam for the purpose of tourism or also settlement. So to that regard, the prospect is quite promising for both countries, and there is a strong incentive to continue this trend also. So that is why the Pham Minh has come here, and then as a way to show some friendship and improve the hospitality between those two countries as well.
Right. And on the Vietnamese Prime Minister's agenda here in South Korea, aside from the business forum that we mentioned earlier, is also a cultural forum, Professor Rajiv Kumar. How effective, do you suppose, has the presence of Hallyu in Vietnam been in promoting bilateral ties, do you think?
Yeah, that's a very crucial aspects of South Korea-Vietnam relations. Hallyu has a very deep positive impact in Vietnam. K-pop, that includes music, fashion, drama, all gain immense popularity in Vietnam. I have traveled to Vietnam and I have seen the impact of Hallyu in Vietnam. And it has also a very important impact on economic relations as well as people-to-people tie as well. For example, from economic side, due to Hallyu, Korean companies are able to sell their products in Vietnam. They have seen the rise of their sales in Vietnam market. At the same time, Korean companies are also investing in Vietnam retail and entertainment sector due to the rise of Korean product popularity in Vietnam. If you look at the impact on people-to-people ties due to Hallyu, that's also very significant because as many Vietnamese youth, they came to know about Hallyu and they are quite impressed with Hallyu. They want to come to Korea. And that is why, as I mentioned, that currently 70,000 Vietnamese students are studying in Korea, and that number is going to increase very soon because a large number of Vietnamese students, they want to come to Korea to study. Not only that, Vietnamese people, they are also now preferring to come to Korea for tourism. And according to one report, the Vietnamese tourist emerged as one of the largest spender in Korea. So we can see that the Hallyu has a significant impact on economic ties as well as people-to-people tie as well.
Right, indeed. Professor Song, perhaps I should have asked you this earlier, but what makes Vietnam a lucrative investment destination for South Korea? And likewise, what makes South Korea an appealing economic partner for Vietnam?
Currently, I think it is biased. I mean, so it is not anymore level ground because to Vietnam is economy, South Korea is a really good export market. Like the South Korea in 1980s, the U.S. is a really good export market. But currently, the import from South Korea to Vietnam is not much. I don't think much because currently the per capita GDP is still 1/4 of South Korea and even with 1/10. And considering the purchasing power parity, the per capita GDP would be 1/4 of South Korea. So to that regard, the Vietnam is not a good export market from South Korea's perspective, but that is relatively the price is cheaper in Vietnam. Therefore, the South Korean manufacturing companies, or they could make some investment in Vietnam to manufacture, to export the products to some advanced country through Vietnam. That is why the South Korea economy has invested so much in Vietnam and through the ODA. And also so many people, for example, I just saw a moment ago, Ann Kruger has mentioned, who paid a visit to Korea, has mentioned the Korean government would like to be flexible enough to adopt or accept the foreigners as a source of the labor. And so to that regard, the Vietnamese 45,000 people has applied for the application for the job in South Korea. So that is a very good signal to have some good perspective between the Vietnam and South Korea.
Right, of course, indeed. And back on the diplomatic front, Professor Kumar, last year alone, Vietnam played host separately to the leaders of South Korea, the US, as well as China. And this year, quite recently, it played host to the Russian leader as well. What do you suppose is the importance of Vietnam to its regional partners, especially amid the current geopolitical tensions?
Yeah, if you want to understand why Vietnam is becoming so important and crucial to major powers, we have to consider three key points. First is Vietnam's strategic location. Second is its economic growth potential. And third, its foreign policy approach. So let me go one by one. Why Vietnam is so important is one, because of, as I mentioned, a strategic location. Vietnam is emerging as a key manufacturing hub in this region. As well as Vietnam also have an economic growth potential because it's one of the fastest growing economy in this region. And that is why majority of major nations, including US, South Korea, Japan, even China, they are heavily investing in Vietnam due to its economic growth potential. On diplomatic front too, we have to see what kind of approach Vietnam is having at the moment. Vietnam is pursuing currently the bamboo diplomacy, and that bamboo diplomacy stress on flexibility and resilience. That means Vietnam wants to have good relation with all major powers, also want to maintain a balanced relationship so that it can navigate through all these geopolitical tensions. That's why it's having a very good relation with the diplomatic blocs like US, Japan, on the other hand. At the same time, Vietnam is also having good relation with China as well. And that's why we have seen that Vietnam has hosted leaders from China, Russia, US, Japan, South Korea. So as I mentioned that if you really want to understand why Vietnam is emerging so crucial, then we have to understand Vietnam's strategic location, its economic growth potential, as well as its flexible foreign policy approach.
Right. And meanwhile, back on the economy, Professor Song, what are your prospects regarding South Korea's economic ties with Vietnam, especially in the field of semiconductors?
Yeah, I cannot but talk about Professor Rajiv's just more comments about the moments ago, particularly very interesting terminology, the bamboo diplomacy. I clearly agree with his position and ideas. And to that regards, actually, the Vietnamese government has established some comprehensive strategic partnership with China, Russia, and India. Then the first is South Korea. So to that regard, the Vietnamese government has not yet established such a strategic partnership with or some advanced countries in the US or in Europe at all. So to that regards, they would like to maintain very hard and strong but flexible enough to be molded into different shape. I think that is the idea of the bamboo diplomatics. Also, that is also true to some economic situations, economic trade relationship with South Korea. Because South Korea, Samsung, and previously they have, Samsung has invested so much in China. But however, because of as I mentioned earlier, because of the conflict between China and the US trade, Samsung cannot but move. They can help moving to Vietnam, the neighboring country. The same is also true to Lotte and the other SK and the other big conglomerates, because Vietnam not only have a huge population and relatively very cheap labor, even though the base salary has been increased recently. But so that is very attractive to South Korea, some big manufacturing companies and a kind of a hub to produce some products for the semiconductor parts and the garments and some digital electricity. So that's why Vietnam has become a very important partner to South Korea economy also.
Right. Professor Kumar, generally speaking, very generally speaking, how far do you suppose has South Korea come in its quest to becoming a global pivotal state, speaking within your capacity as a scholar?
Yeah, that's a very important development taking place in South Korea. As we all are aware about that the current president, Yoon Suk-yeol, he is pursuing the global pivotal state diplomacy, and under this strategy, they want to make Korea as a responsible state who can promote freedom, rule of law, human rights in the global affairs. And I think Korea is trying to achieve its objective in many ways. The first is Korea is trying to play a more proactive role in global diplomacy. For example, if you look at the diplomatic negotiation between South Korea and United States, South Korea and Japan recently, you will find that there are so many contents are there. That content suggests that Korea is becoming more proactive to raise its voice about rule of law, freedom of navigation in the Indo-Pacific region. Not only that, but Korea is also trying to achieve its foreign policy priorities by enhancing humanitarian aids and development ODA. For example, this year South Korea have announced to invest around 5 billion USD for official development assistant, ODA. That's a significant increase from the last year, almost 10% increase. So that's very, very important to understand how Korea is going to realize its global pivotal state diplomacy. Even in South Korea, Vietnam ties too, Korea is trying to achieve its foreign policy priority. Because if you look at the last year content when President Yoon went to Vietnam, he clearly mentioned that South Korea wants to establish a relation with Vietnam on a strategic front to promote rule-based order in the Indo-Pacific. I think it's a very, very important development. So I think South Korea is trying to achieve its foreign policy priorities through these kind of initiatives.
And it's on the right path then, right, Professor Kumar?
I think so.
All right. Professor Kumar, I'm afraid that's all the time we have for this edition. Thank you very much for your time and your thoughts today.
Thanks for having me.
And Professor Song, as always, thank you very much for your insights today.
Yeah, thank you.
Right, well, that ends this edition of Issues and Insiders. Thank you for watching. See you same time tomorrow.